Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall. Today, I'm joined by Dan Devine, a senior NBA reporter for Yahoo Sports and a longtime Knicks fan, to talk and bask in the glory of the Knicks' round one victory over the Cleveland Cavaliers, tell you which Eastern Conference Finals team from the past the New York Knicks most compares to, and then start previewing Knicks Heat part one. Part two is going to come out later today, but let's get into it on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks part of your daily routine, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And if you haven't already, please go subscribe and hit that notifications bell on YouTube so you become an everydayer. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And I don't want to delay it long because this is one of my favorite podcasts we've ever done on Locked On Knicks, chopping it up with Dan Devine about the Cavs series and about the Heat series to come. Again, this is just part 1 and 2. We dive even deeper into Knicks Heat in just a couple hours. But for now, enjoy this part 1 right here on Locked On Knicks. All right, as promised, I can say I'm thrilled to be joined by Dan Devine, a senior NBA writer once again at Yahoo Sports and the co-host of the No Cap Room podcast that is available wherever you can find your podcast, much like Locked On Knicks. Dan, welcome to the show. I got to imagine, as a fellow Knicks fan, you've had a fun last few weeks.
It's been really funny because it's also like it's been great. Like the atmosphere has been incredible. The vibe of everything has been fantastic. The Knicks Cavs series was also both the most right I was about anything in the first round and the most wrong I've been about anything in the first round, because when we had to do the previews and we were doing, both on the podcast and in writing and everything, I just kept being like, that offensive rebounding is going to be a problem. Maybe I'm crazy, but it feels like it's going to be a problem. And I wrote about it and I mentioned it and I talked about it. And then I picked Cavs in 7. And I don't know if that's because there's like an emotional hedge component to it where you're like, I feel like I see something in me, but I'm an idiot. I must be wrong about this. Or I see something, but it can't, like, maybe it's a big deal, but like they'll figure it out. They're a smart team, good coaching staff, great talent, etc. And so then like by game 3, that'll be neutralized. And then it's going to be about shot making. And I believe in their shot makers, whatever the thought process that went into it. Like I had the right answer and then I circled C anyway. And so to come away from it being like proud in an analytical component.
Yeah.
Frustrated in my cowardice, and but also like overflowing with like, holy cow, a Knicks team that's actually worth, and like all of that excitement that everybody is investing into it. It's been an emotional roller coaster the last few weeks, professionally and personally.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate because I picked the Cavs in 6, and it was sort of the same thing where I came on the podcast, like listed all the reasons why the Knicks could win, where they had advantages, and then there's just and I don't think it's irrational because it's 23 years of kind of getting kicked in the stomach that you're like there's going to be a way that this ultimately doesn't work out, and what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking in the regular season results just aren't going to translate for some reason or another. And to be fair, the Cavs were a really good team. I think they were second in the entire NBA in point differential on a per possession basis. There was like a lot painting them as a team that I think had a statistical profile that was better than your typical 4 seed. And that's kind of what I kept falling back on. Like, look, this team is legitimately awesome. And then you get into the series, and in some ways, like everything goes wrong for the Knicks, right? Julius Randle, the one guy on this team to make an all-star team, finished the series shooting 33% from the field, 25% from 3. If you look on cleaning the glass and points per shot attempt in the playoffs, he's last in the entire NBA. And that is the guy that you were, obviously, with the caveat that he came into the series injured. And that's a caveat, unfortunately, we're going to have to use for the next series, too. And he completely struggled. The Knicks shot worse than pretty much any other playoff team. They scored worse than pretty much any other playoff team. And to your point, it didn't matter because they were it was like a high school team going up against a middle school team. Like they just bullied the Cavs into submission. And I was curious, like, what you saw from that down the stretch of game 5, because I don't know about you. It almost didn't feel real watching it, the way the Knicks could just play volleyball on the glass, miss shot after shot. Mitchell Robinson scored essentially all their points in the fourth quarter, and it didn't matter.
So there's two things about that. And one of them goes back to that, like the cosmic component that we were discussing at the beginning, where you're like, well, it's at some point this will all go wrong. So the Knicks have the chance to clinch their first postseason series victory in 10 years. I was lucky enough to be able to be at the Garden to cover 3 and 4. But my assignment for that night, on the 4-game night where they were all overlapping and jumping into each other, was Grizzlies Lakers. So I'm like, I will watch the beginning of this game and then I'll have to catch all the rest of it on DVR. So live, I'm getting texts from like my brothers and my brother-in-law and my high school friends being like, oh my God, they're doing it. And I'm like, I'm trying to watch friggin' like Jaren Jackson Jr. pick and rolls here, guys. Like I know I'm excited, but like I can't do the thing right now. So it's like, of course, that is how you experience this moment of elation, is reflected off the glass, so Mitchell Robinson can go get it. But the second part of it is it was the series in microcosm, right? It was this what made the difference in this series, and it was the fact that throughout, all the way through, the Knicks had a tactical advantage that they understood and leveraged and leaned on. We don't care how many open corner threes Isaac Okoro and Jetty Osman and even Karis LeVert to some extent, and insert fifth player here, whoever you want to pull. We don't care. Those guys can take 25 open shots if they want. We are going to put 4 bodies in front of Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland at all times, because we believe that you're not going to be able to make us pay for it. And then on the other end, we believe that you're going to be so scared of what Jalen Brunson can do as like a search and destroy ISO mismatch hunter, that you're going to shift your defense over toward him and load up to him. And that's going to give some offensive rebounder, either the biggest and best one in the series, or Josh Hart, the second best one in the series, even though he's not the biggest, basically a chance to go at a back-turned defender with space to go up to the glass. And over and over and over again, you saw those advantages play out. And those advantages, like the Cavs, we reached a point, and I think maybe it was like the middle of game 4, where I realized, like, oh, they don't have an answer for this. If they had one, if JB Bickerstaff felt confident that he had one, and of course now as we talk, the cops are coming for me outside the window. If they had an answer for this, they would have come to it by now. They don't. So what the Knicks have to do is just keep leaning and pushing. And then over the course of time, the fact, like when you look at the box score and it's like Mitchell Robinson has 10 offensive rebounds, you're like, all right, can we play the rest of this game with running time? Because the facts of the case are not going to change. And credit to the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau and that staff for A, identifying it, B, refusing to go away from it, hammering it and saying, we don't think you can stop this from being an advantage in our favor. Prove it. And the Cavs never did. And then they only won 1 game. And so the Knicks could have, now the Knicks can't continue to average like barely a point per possession in the next series and continue to go on. But, or actually maybe they can in the next series. I don't know. But recognizing where your strengths are and where your advantages are, and then just hammering them. That is the hallmark of teams that win in the postseason. And for the first time in a long time, the Knicks are one of those.
Guys, we'll be back in just a sec to continue going through the defining factors in the Knicks' victory over the Cavs. But first, I have to tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. Hint, hint, the Knicks. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win with the right parts guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And it kind of speaks to, I mean, both the evolution of Tom Thibodeau and what made him great in the first place, right? Because that stubbornness is what it tends to elevate his teams in the regular season, and then also puts kind of a ceiling on them in the playoffs. And it's like, all right, this is what we do well. we're going to keep doing it over and over again. And oftentimes other teams adjust, and then he couldn't adjust. And this series, I think, was defined by the fact that he could adjust and he was willing to try different things. And after the Knicks got dominated in game 2, he was like, all right, how can we figure this out? And got much more creative offensively. And after kind of inexplicably in game 2 going away from those guard to guard screens, went back to them defensively, like to your point, like maybe like to a smart extent, was like, I don't think Karis LeVert can do that 3 times in a row. And there were spurts where LeVert like still killed the Knicks. But they were able to figure it out partially by switching Jalen Brunson just onto Darius Garland instead, and saying, all right, instead of having 2 guys kill us, we're going to dare 1 guy to kill us, but with a whole lot of help shaded his direction. And it's going to be interesting to see if the Knicks can pull off that same trick against the Miami Heat. But before we get to that, Dan, I was kind of curious because I'm looking at this like on a longer scope here. And again, I'm nervous to do it because as we just said, there's a certain like even I know as you were just saying like, oh, I wish the last 10 minutes could have gone to running time. Like I thought it in a different way, and more so in the sense of like, I can't believe the Knicks are getting away with this. Like, and I feel like I saw it over and over again. And there was just there's a certain certainty, right? Like just in pure physicality, like you don't have to make shots. You don't have to leave it up to skill. You just have to leave it up to being bigger and stronger and more determined and better able in Josh Hart's case to magically like gauge the trajectory of every single ball. And I still didn't trust it. So maybe there's a little bit of that here, but let's just say there is a long runway for this Knicks team, right? Taking on the Heat, who they were 3-1 against in the regular season, potentially playing the Celtics in the conference finals, who they were very good against in the regular season. I guess my next step is I'm like, all right, like, is there a team similar to this that did it before? And where my mind went was Tom Thibodeau's first Great Bulls team, the 2010-11 team that won 60 games, similarly led by a star guard in Derrick Rose. Obviously, Jalen Brunson is not in that MVP ether this year, but maybe kind of similar in his way to just pile up buckets, even if the fashion in which he does so is completely opposite. And then surrounding him by a bunch of goons, but a bunch of really skilled goons who are super cohesive. And look, you look at the 2 rosters there's some obvious differences there, but I think just in how they win, both, I looked this up, both rebounded exactly 37% of their offensive rebounds.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. Both led the playoffs so far in defensive rating. Both dominated on the defensive glass. Like there is some statistical overlap there. And not really in terms of regular season dominance, but there is in the sense that since the Knicks have gotten Josh Hart, they played like a 56-win team, which is close to that. I'll stop talking. Is that the team that comes to your mind? Is there another team that comes to your mind?
You don't have to stop talking. It's your show. You get your name's on the bottom. You get to say whatever you want. That's kind of the rule.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that makes sense, especially considering one of the things that Tibbs says. There are certain things that he says over and over again, and one of the things that he says over and over again is like the things that win don't change, right? And so there's that, and he will, in the course of an answer, which I know now because being in the pressers and then transcribing it all, you're like, he said the same thing 4 different times in the last 2 days. But, and then of course, if you're on the beat, I'm sure that is the case for 6 months or 4 years or whatever. But where it's like, you get 2 on the ball, you make the pass, you make the easy read, the game will tell you what to do, all that kind of stuff. But he hammered like, it's about defensive rebounding, first shot defense, preventing them from getting second shot opportunities, pushing in transition when you got the opportunity, creating easy shots, all like the stuff that he believes is fundamental to winning. He probably has not changed. I mean, he has updated some of those things. As you mentioned, he was a bit more flexible in terms of the lineups that he was willing to put out there, making decisions like keep running with Obi for longer in the fourth quarter, game 3, all those sorts of things. But the stuff that he believes matters, he believes matters. And that's the way coaches are oftentimes. So hearing that there are significant statistical and profile similarities between that Bulls team and this Knicks team does not surprise me. The one that I thought of, and this is like, I don't know, maybe I'm putting a little bit too much English on the ball, but it goes back to me being like why I didn't pick the Knicks in the first round series. The last time the Knicks were in a 4-5 series, they had a regular season advantage against the team that they played. They, matched up, it seemed like fairly well statistically with the team they were playing, but the 5 seed, the underdog in that series, had a tactical advantage that they could just hit over and over again and push on the bruise and push on the bruise. And that's those Atlanta Hawks. And so in that first round series, Atlanta had a tactical advantage. This is how we play pick and roll with our shooters. We're going to force you to either come up and to try to stop Trey's floater or stop Trey's pull-up jumper. And if you do that, we're throwing the lob. If you hang back to prevent the lob, he's hitting the floater or he's getting into the pull-up jumper. If you put 2 on the ball, he's getting off of it. He's creating an open look for shooter somewhere else. And the Knicks could not solve that problem for 5 games. And that's all it lasted, was 5 games, because they could not solve that problem. And then the Hawks went into a second round series where they did not seem to have like massive tactical advantages against the 76ers, but they kind of only needed a couple of things to not go right in that series. You had Embiid, I believe, was coming off of an injury in the Washington series, so he wasn't at 100%. Ben Simmons' failings reared their ugly head in terms of his unwillingness to take shots in the fourth quarter. The lack of spacing around Embiid in that series wound up being a problem. There were defenders you could take advantage of with Kevin Huerter going after Seth Curry, rather. And so you just needed your point guard wound up being the best player in the series when he needed to be it. And so you didn't necessarily need to have overwhelming across the board matchup advantages. You just needed a couple of things to go right for them to be able to come out of that series. Now, obviously, things go aground in the conference finals for that team against the Bucks team that goes on to win the championship. But even in that series, Giannis goes down with a knee injury. If not for Trae Young turning his ankle, I believe stepping on a ref on the sideline in that series, turning his ankle, that series was tight in the middle, and who knows? And so it's not a one-to-one comparison, because stylistically and the way that the Knicks go about their making their money is different than the way that Hawks team did. That was, much more of an offense first team that didn't have the same sort of defensive grind capacity that this Knicks team does, and had way more sort of it was a higher octane offense. Although the Knicks all regular season were a team like that, they just got about it differently. But I think in terms of just when you get to the postseason, it's about what question can you ask that they can't answer. And that Hawks team, and now it took a perfect storm. It was not indicative of like years of unending ascent for that Hawks team, but series by series for 2 weeks at a time, they had a path. And I wonder if that could be the case for this Knicks team too.
Deck, but first, we're always throwing money at something. Kids' school supplies, a new house project. The list goes on. It's time to stop spending your hard-earned money without getting anything in return. Enter Ibotta. You can earn cash back on every shopping trip. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year in real cash back. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping list, or you could use your cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you've been dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. A typical basket of groceries was over $50 more expensive at the end of 2022 than the beginning of the year due to inflation. You could earn 2.5 times that in cash back from Ibotta, or even more depending on how much you use Ibotta. Ibotta gives you real cash back, not points. Other apps gives you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED. When you register, just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play Store or App Store, and use code LOCKED. Yeah, I think perfect storm is the term, right? Because you always think about it more in a March Madness context, right? Where you just have to win one game, and a perfect storm becomes like the probability of it. It's more like 1 in 1,000 than like 1 in 1,000,000, right? And the NBA is not supposed to be about that. The 7-game format is supposed to eliminate that, and yet, as we just saw with the Heat and the Bucks, one key injury, like all of a sudden, like it because like the weather shifts pretty quickly, and Jimmy Butler, Stormbringer, can make it happen very fast. And then from a Knicks perspective, like it sort of feels that same way. And then if they're getting ahead of myself here, but if they got into a series with the Celtics or like whoever came out of the West, like it feels almost like Milwaukee to me, right or wrong, like felt like the one team where I was like, again, unless Giannis got hurt or something, like there just weren't answers there for the Knicks because they kind of did what the Knicks did, but better. And like, and the Knicks philosophy of just of bullying and battering you, the Bucks were like, all right, we like Brook Lopez and Giannis, like case closed, not going to happen to us.
Right.
And against the Heat, it's interesting because they have a similar toughness. They have Jimmy Butler, but the personnel, like, again, I'm not, because of my Knicks induced narcissism, like I'm not inclined to believe it. But you look at the personnel and you say like the Knicks like should on paper probably win this series. They're the deeper team. Certainly if Julius Randle is healthy, they have, I think, a lot more scoring than Miami does. The way they played in the playoffs defensively, they should be about as good as Miami is. Kevin Love is a weak point on defense that the Knicks like will maybe have to play with Obi Toppin. But even Obi Toppin at this point, a little bit more mobile. I say all that to say, like, this would be a series that I think would clearly be in the Knicks' favor, except Jimmy Butler is kind of the boogeyman, right? Like coming off of what people smarter than me have called like one of the best series in NBA history, 37 points per game, over 60% from the field, eviscerated everyone on the Bucks. Not named Drew Holiday and kind of sort of Drew Holiday.
Yeah, even
as well.
Holiday. Yeah, right.
Sure. You've eviscerated everyone on what was supposed to be like the toughest, most complete, most consistent team. And the shocking part about it was that it only took 5 games, even with Giannis missing 2. That was one of the ones that the Bucks actually won. And that was supposed to be the team that like you could take them down. But even a year ago with Chris Middleton hurt, like it is going to kill you to beat them. And it didn't kill Miami because Jimmy Butler was just that good. This might be a stupid question, but how scared should the Knicks be of Jimmy Butler doing that again?
I mean, what's the Popovich term? It's like appropriate fear.
I
think every level of fear right now is appropriate for Jimmy Butler, just because there is no. He was able to find avenues to get good possessions against everybody, and that doesn't mean that has to continue, but. It's not just it is his own individual shot making, which, by the way, I believe the stat was he made 9 pull-up threes all season and made 8 in the series against the Bucks. Right. So like
crazy.
Now as like a sober-minded analyst, you look at it and say, all right, the Heat shot 45% from 3 in that series. And it's like, I think was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 8 guys shot 40% or better from 3 in that series, including Jimmy Butler. And so that's not likely to sustain because they are not that kind of shooting team. That said, they do have shooters, right? Max Strus is a shooter. Gabe Vincent is a shooter. Duncan Robinson, exhumed from the end of the rotation, is a shooter. Kevin Love, if he can stay on the floor, is a shooter. He struggled for large portions of the regular season. A lot of that might have been down to a thumb injury. Thumb seems pretty good right now. He was popping shots off the pick and pop against the Bucks with no problem. So there are guys who can be dangerous in that capacity. And then if you're able to run everything through Jimmy and Bam as pick and roll players, dribble handoff targets, guys who can create, draw 2, and then kick, they create problems. And so there is, I don't know that I would say that the Knicks necessarily, the Knicks are deeper insofar as, we've seen Tyler Hero go down. We've seen Victor Oladipo go down. The Heat are not replete with like high end rotation options, but we've also seen Eric Spoelstra is like the best chopped chef in the league, where like whatever's in the cupboard, he's going to make something good out of it. Yeah. And so like you can scoff at Haywood Highsmith getting rotation minutes at the end of a closeout game 5 or whatever, but the guy's on the floor because they believe in him, and they must believe in him for a reason to some degree. So I think that the sort of glass half empty view, if you are a Knicks fan, and of course we are maybe we have a predilection toward the glass half empty view. History has taught us, but would be that while that shooting was an outlier, it might not be wholly unreplicable given the way that their shooters are shooting now. And that Jimmy can be the best player in the series. He was just the best player in a series that had Giannis in it. So that is and we've seen him do this on the big stage time and again. You can no longer sort of quarantine that. Sorry, that's a bad term, but like you can no longer just say it was in the bubble. Mm-hmm. Now it has, it has escaped contain. It is.
There you go.
he has done it elsewhere too. But the glass half full side is if that shooting tails off, if they are not able to get the same volume of 3-point shots, the Knicks have, are better equipped on the perimeter to sort of run guys off the line, force them inside toward Mitch, that kind of thing. And if the Knicks are able to throw more bodies at Jimmy in a way that the Bucks were not able to some degree, you put Jrue Holiday on Jimmy Butler because Jrue Holiday can guard anybody and is maybe the best defensive guard in the league. But Jimmy also has a significant size advantage on him and a strength advantage on him, and he was able to leverage that time and again. And when they didn't do that, he hunted Chris Middleton, who was on a bulky leg. He hunted whatever other perimeter defender was out there and went after him. He could go and attack Brook Lopez on a switch on the perimeter. The Knicks are going to be able to put hard on him. The Knicks are going to be able to put, if Quentin Grimes, obviously that's a big question mark, is what Grimes' availability is going to be. I believe he had sort of the most possessions guarding him in the half court during the regular season. But also able to put, RJ as a sort of similarly sized strength defender. You can live with Julius on him on switches of possessions because of the size and physicality matchup. If Julius is healthy, quickly undersized, but the length can cause problems. Like there are options to go to defensively, not all at the same elite level as Jrue Holiday, but maybe a better array of options than the Bucks were able to put out there with Giannis with the back injury, with Middleton hobbled, and without much else in the way of perimeter depth. So I think if you can, the hope would be you quiet Jimmy even a little bit. If he's not scoring a point a minute on like 850 true shooting, you've done a job. And then will the other shots dry up a little bit? If they hit a cold snap, if they go instead of 15 for 30 from three, if they go 10 for 35 or whatever, then that tilts the math in your favor a little bit to where some of those other physicality advantages might be able to tilt your way. And then again, going back to the rebounding point, the Heat were, a quarter away from going home in the play-in large part because they got smoked by Atlanta on the offensive glass in their first play-in meeting. They had a hard time with the Bulls' physicality. Even a not great Bulls team, but with their physicality at the point of attack at the rim, some of that can translate here. And so it's a matter of, it's going to be a big Mitch series. It's going to be a big Josh Hart series. And then it's a question of, can Brunson be enough of a facilitator against whatever perimeter options they've got available to get you across the finish line offensively? I think there's reasons to be optimistic about it. But a lot of it's got to come down to, like, if Jimmy is playing God mode ball, then the Knicks might not have quite the high end answers to be able to match with him in a short series.
All right, guys, that's it for this one with Dan Devine. We will be back in your feeds in just a couple hours to continue talking Knicks Heat, breaking down every element of that series, the implications of Julius Randle's injury. Can RJ Barrett sustain his play? Can Mitchell Robinson sustain his play? Can the Knicks stop Jimmy Butler? All that and more next time on Locked On Knicks with Dan Devine.